You are tuned in to a Fireside chat with Zany Mystic. Join us now on another exciting metaphysical journey. Relax, tune in, drop out, and take a seat by the fire as we explore new realms and possibilities. This is Magenta Pixie. You can find me at magentapixie.weebly.com. But now, here is Zany Mystic and guest. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. I'm your host, Lance White. Tonight, it's my great pleasure to speak to Lou Bognon. Lou is, and I do hope I said that right, we'll ask her when she comes on. Lou is a spiritual teacher, spiritual healer, and therapist. She has authored a trilogy of books on spiritual teachings: How to Light a Candle, We Are Here to Learn, and The Divine Laws. I am privileged to have just read her fifth book, A Walk on the Sacred Side, which is a compilation of her sacred healing moments. In addition, Lou produces and presents The Inner Voice, which is broadcast internationally on Channel Africa via satellite and internet radio. So tonight, we're blessed with hearing her live from South Africa on the other side of the broadcast as my guest. Let's welcome Lou to the show now. Hi, Lou. How are you?
Fine, Lance. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my great pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you for being on so early, because I know that it's probably, for most people, quite early to get up in the morning.
Yes, but it's fine. It was a great pleasure. Really.
Oh, good. Well, before we get into any deep subjects, I just wanted to let you know that I love your book, A Walk on the Sacred Side.
Thank you.
Yes, the stories are not only inspirational, but there's a kind of a raw truthfulness to them, and you use teaching tools in sharing your private insights and miracles. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I just loved reading every second of it.
Thank you, Lance.
Do you have any favorite stories in the book, or did it just kind of flow one into the next?
Well, they actually did flow one into the next, because, it's a compilation of more than 20 years of this work that I am so passionate about. So I actually asked for guidance. Where do I start? What do I remove? What do I add? So, in a sense, they just flow to me, from one side to the other.
Yes. Well, one thing that I think is very unusual about you, and this takes you back really to the beginning of your life, you had kind of an unusual birth, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Do you want to talk about that at all? You were actually aware of the moment that you popped out of the oven.
Yes, I was, and like I've shared in my little spiritual bio, it took me 28 years to gather the courage to ask my parents, because I thought maybe this is a bad dream. But in fact, I remembered all the details of my birth, and especially so hanging, from the umbilical cord, and until I was actually cut. And I have come to the conclusion over my 53 years that obviously I was out of body at the time of being born, which, as I go on to say, being out of body became a very easy state for me to live on, where a lot of people, do a lot of efforts to get there. For me, it became sort of a second natural state of being. And it has served me well to face planet Earth, to face adversity, to face difficulties. I have often been able to just, with a very little effort, step out and watch myself as a physical body from a safer distance, if it makes any sense,
Yeah. Amazing. And then you had some fascinating experiences. You ended up a South African diplomat in France?
Yes, but even before I was a South African diplomat in France, I was a South African illegal. I was an illegal citizen in this country, so it was a very difficult beginning for me because I arrived here illegally. I crossed the border, the Swaziland mountains, as an illegal. Then I was a married mother. Then eventually sooner or later it was meant to happen that I would be caught by the security police. And so it was a very stressful period of my life, as you can imagine, because then I'm alone, I have a baby, I cannot work in places that perhaps would correspond better to my capabilities. So it was a very difficult period of my life. But as you know, you've been there yourself so many times. I am still reading your book, and it is just so extraordinary, the amount of visits to the bottom of the well that you have.
Oh,
so when we go into those places, we actually discover our strengths. And I had this advantage. I could always be out of body when it was too much, and that's how I coped. And that's how I've learned to grow and to adapt, and also to ground myself on this planet.
Mm-hmm. Now, after you became a citizen in legally, then you also have worked in the corporate rat race, which is kind of it must have been a trying period of time, since inside you were a healer, and you probably weren't feeling all that interested in the material realms. Was that a springboard for you to move into your soul's purpose?
Well, I suppose that, with insight, of course, when you look back into your 53 years, which it's a little bit of years on planet Earth, you do realize that everything that you have done and everything that you have, wherever you have been placed by life, all those things have had a reason, and they were part of your teaching, part of your grooming for whatever comes next. So in many senses, even though I never was happy in the corporate world, and I was not particularly excited about being a diplomat either, and I was not very excited in business partnerships also, it is true that it all brought skills, and it all brought opportunities to broaden my mind, to travel, because lads, I really grew up in the rural areas of Mozambique, where I wasn't subject to all the trappings of the so-called civilized world. So I did not grow up with television. I did not grow up with all the trappings, say, that the rest of the world did. So I had to create and to learn much later than most people, in actual fact, an environment also conducive to learning. That is why I only was able to go back to higher education and to university quite late, when my daughter was already 8, if I remember correctly. So, but all this is part of the journey, as you know. And of course, when you are on the journey, very often you are not present, because, being present is one of the greatest and perhaps most difficult lessons. And for me, even more so, because I could be already from birth in 2 dimensions. So for me, I was present here and I was present there. And when you are in 2 places, you are really nowhere. You are not grounded. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting journey, and I kept this longing in my heart. When will I be free from all this heaviness? When will I be free from all the survival modes, that you go into, especially when you have children, like I did. Mm-hmm. And so I became the householder, carrying the responsibilities at all levels. So it was also very hard, because even if I would have wanted to move closer to my predestined gift, I couldn't. At one point, you cannot think of yourself and what you want to do or whatever. You have to think of all those that are dependent upon you for survival themselves, So
Right.
it was a bit of a difficult period, but in the end, that only gave me more determination and more courage, and I suppose perhaps it was my soul's own experience in order to learn to be more patient and just watch and wait. And so it paid out in the end,
Well, patience is something I'm still trying to work on. I haven't mastered that one yet.
I don't think we master anything at any time.
No, I don't think so either.
We progress. I think
I agree with you on that one thoroughly. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the healing. Did you always, like for instance, my mother used to take care of patients, and she would say she could feel the energy from her hands, and she was a natural healer and empath. She was also an alcoholic, so she didn't do very well with it. But did you have that feeling in your hands, or was it something that you were moved to do? How did you begin healing?
Yes, I did have. I started, as I shared also with you previously on my little bio. I started being aware of the gift as a very small child, because growing up in Mozambique, it was, and it still is, one of the poorest countries in the world. And, of course, the rural areas were not equipped in any way or form whatsoever to handle sick people. So here comes along organizations, wonderful organizations, by the way, such as the Red Cross International. And where I grew up, they had put up this huge, enormous tent camp in order to attend to the rural people. And so they would come from very far away and queue up for the whole day. And that became my focus of interest at a very early point of my life. I wanted to be like the doctors there, and I wanted to be like the nurses there, and I wanted to be literally only where there were sick people. That was my focus. The self-awareness, as far as the energy flowing in and through us, comes much later, That does not really come when you are a child. Even so, it obviously came to the people that are touched, because they are the ones that started telling me as I was such a little child that I had the gift. But you tell that to an 8 or a 9-year-old, and they sort of look, what is having the gift? You cannot process that information. But I could understand with my heart and soul that, that is what I wanted to do, and that is what I had come to do. So I had that awareness, I suppose, at an earlier age than most people. And it has imprinted my life for me to always know exactly what I wanted. Where a lot of people, as you know, grow in so many different directions, and they never find out what they know, what they want, what they came here to do. And so in that sense, I was very privileged, because I felt guided from a very, very, very early age, and there was no doubt for me. When it comes to the thermal and the temperature that your body goes through, it is true that it affects us in ways that are very typical, and I suppose that you have interviewed many healers, and especially naturally born like I am, and they will have shared with you that the heat that comes from our body sometimes is something really almost scary. I do recall even at one point when I was in my early 30s, perhaps late 20s, my own little child having to bring me ice cubes to put all over my legs and my arms. I felt so often that I was going to disappear into a slow combustion mode. That is how uncomfortable the energy sometimes would become. And even today, after I've been healing for so many years, I often have to stop during a session, because the patient will say to me, the heat coming from your body is so strong that I am feeling nauseous. It's like being in radiotherapy or radiated, you know. So I sort of have to